But I think what's happening with this API is that it's more than just the next shiny new Twitter client. I think it's remarkable what's happening with Twitter clients. But you see these new apps coming in with content curation. You see these apps with discovery, with finance. What Howard's doing at StockTwits is fantastic. So I think sometimes we get kind of specific about some of these applications and think about like one use case when the use case is quite diverse.
In the Twitter papers that got leaked on TechCrunch, it was leaked that Twitter was interested in CodeTweet. Is that still the case, or do you sense that something like CodeTweet or an enterprise tool like that would be interesting?
I'm an investor in CodeTweet, so obviously the acquisition didn't happen. CodeTweet went ahead and raised an angel round and is pursuing an independent career.
Okay. So that's the answer. That they're not going to get bought. I mean,
Well, not for now.
Is there any interesting companies that are happening that you're,
Well, I
seeing that?
Like Bijan said, I think a lot of the clients are really interesting. TweetDeck, TweetMeme. I have no idea if Twitter's going to acquire any of these companies because I'm not privy to that information. But there are a lot of really interesting companies getting a huge amount of traction in the space. And then a lot of the real-time search companies that are out there.
Like what? Which ones? OneRiot or?
OneRiot, CrowdEye, Scoopler. There's probably 5 really good companies in the real-time search space that are going to validate that space as well.
Isn't that really competitive with Twitter, though? At some point, Twitter is going to wake up to doing real-time search. Don't you think that would be trying to do a separate company and then having Twitter come in and jump on that would be risky?
Well, right now I think they're complementary, and I think all these companies have pretty unique intellectual property, which means other companies are probably going to be interested in acquiring them as well, as it becomes clear that this is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. All of the large internet sites are probably going to be interested in getting into this space, not just Google and Microsoft.
Yeah, sorry, Rob, go ahead.
Well, I have a strong opinion. I think my opinion is, when I started investing in the Twitter space a year ago, and people don't, I personally think fine. If you look at the world today, I think, we've talked about entertainment. Dave Warner was talking about how Twitter is not the same. I mean, really, we're in control of the product. Meaning, I can control, if someone says I don't like what I'm hearing, I can block them. I don't have to necessarily follow somebody. So I don't understand generally the complaints that, I have my own complaints about Twitter, but I don't understand the complaints that I hear from people. If someone doesn't want to, one of the proudest things is when someone unfollows me because I didn't ask them to follow me. And it doesn't mean if I'm trying to get everybody to follow me, then I'm not being myself and then I'm not using Twitter properly. And one of the greatest areas that never gets talked about is, to toot our own horn at StockTwits, is finance. We just went through one of the most corrupt periods in human history in terms of transition of wealth, and where you have one talking head for the last 10 years being the same. How can you have, if you turn on TV, have CNBC have the same people for 10 years, and nobody can predict where the market goes the next day, yet the same 10 people have hogged the stage in the financial world for the last decade or two. And so if we talk about disruption, there's one industry, forget about going backstage at the Oscars, and I'm sure that's fun, and that's one use of Twitter, but people need to get serious about the real changes that we can do, which Jeff was talking about, and what we're trying to do at StockTwits is just say, no, the expert in agriculture, the expert in Apple, or the expert in Twitter may be sitting at home in his basement, I can't afford a job, but really has a handle on how grains are going to trade, or on what stocks are going to do, or really how Twitter is going to play out. And I think that's the democratization that Twitter is about bringing.
Yeah, I think that's the thing about the comment you made, Robert, about isn't Twitter just going to buy these things? I mean, my hope is that companies and developers and people can build successful independent companies on top of this system. I mean, right now you have companies, making a lot of money off of Google, making a lot of money off of Facebook. And when I say off of, I don't mean in a non-constructive manner, but it's just that ecosystem works, and people say, wow, Zynga's making so much money and SGN's making so much money. That's good for everybody. That's good for Facebook and those apps. And I am hoping that we see more applications on top of Twitter where the end goal is actually to build a very successful company, not be designed from day zero to try to to have Twitter be the M&A strategy.
Yeah, but there's some things that should be built into a core product. Let's talk about lists for a second, right? TweetDeck had lists months ago, but they never took off, really. Not the way that they're going to take off on Twitter, because when you build something into the core product, there's some things that should be in the core product, lists, search, that kind of thing. And there's some things that should be around the core product, like Farmville, right? That's a game that was built on Facebook. That doesn't need to be in Facebook. That can be innovated around it. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I think it really depends. So for example, let me maybe take it out of Facebook just to highlight the point. So for example, Yelp, right? So Yelp has great content. At least in the beginning, significant amount of traffic came from Google. You did a search for a taco in Palo Alto, you got Yelp, right? And so you could argue, should that functionality be in Google? Should Google give you the data like they do with weather? Like if you type in, 94115 weather in Google, they give you the answer. It doesn't, go to weather.com anymore. But Yelp and TripAdvisor, and there have been a number of companies where they built, services and content that, powered by, the Google audience, and they built a business. And so there's always this kind of tension between, platform companies and application companies. I think, Dave and I have talked a lot about that, and, I think the job is for, in this specific area is to make Twitter sufficiently, interesting as a platform where developers feel like they have an opportunity to build standalone companies. Like when Howard raised money from True, I'm assuming, the guys at True are very smart. We've worked with them. They didn't say, Howard, when are you selling this thing to Facebook or Twitter? It was that, had a chance to be a big company.
Well, and I'm on both sides. I've sat with Dick and said, you're making a mistake not buying me, but at the other side of it, I understand why they wouldn't want to buy me. I'm not upset about it. It's my job to go build a business. When, you've written a post about it not to flip. I think it's the same thing about anything. You have to get in the way of an exit. You have to execute. It's just like golf, Tiger with the ball gets in the way of a perfect swing, and the ball will do what it does. I think, it's up to people to execute. There's so many people that get mad that Bitly has a relationship with Twitter, or that TweetDeck does this. The point is, people on the inside are executing, and when you execute, you have to execute to get that exit. And nobody, just because you started a Twitter app and you were first doesn't give you the right to complain. I think we've gotten a little soft there. Whining about why Twitter doesn't do this and why it doesn't do that. I mean, they're growing as fast as they can probably grow.
In the last few minutes, let's talk about geolocation, because Foursquare is taking off with the same group of friends that Twitter took off with in 2006 and 2007. And Twitter is now building in geolocation into the APIs. Where do you think that's going to go? Is there a huge market opportunity for a Foursquare Twitter kind of integrated, or something that's integrated into Twitter like Foursquare?
Yeah, I'm an investor in Foursquare.
What is this guy not an investor in everything?
So we should just disclaim that up front.
Ron passed on my investment. That's the only investment he passed on.
Funny enough, we invest in 1 out of 40 deals that we look at. So we actually spend more of our time doing due diligence than anything else. But Foursquare is a very, very unique application. It does use geo-targeting very, very wisely with a gaming element. And the whole beauty of the Twitter ecosystem is the community continues to do very innovative things with these products. But it's a huge, huge market. So I think there's room for even many companies like Foursquare. People are going to iterate on this idea. We'll see 10 companies in this space.
I know
year.
one coming just tomorrow, coming out that will compete with Foursquare.
But it's a brilliant idea, and consumers love it.
Yeah.
And that's why they're flocking to these products.
But on the other side, I looked at that deal, and from the other side of it, I passed because I would rather not have my location. I would rather tell people I'm someplace. I tell the truth all day, so I'd rather tell people I'm eating pizza in LA than if I'm sitting in New York. I mean, I get bothered enough during the day, so Foursquare didn't resonate. Foursquare didn't resonate with me, you know, so it's different strokes for different folks. I mean, I legitimately.
A lot of people said Twitter was lame when I first showed it to them, right?